have a chance to turn two. They got him. Carrying track, wall, and it's gone. Throwing to the end zone, tipped, picked off. Look, they shoot and score on the header. Welcome back for episode 8 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. I warned you last week that it was time to get really controversial. Now we come to my NFL Hall of Fame tier list. This whole tier list phenomenon's fascinating to me, and this is my first time trying one, so bear with me. Because we're talking about the NFL today, I wanted to get myself a guest working in his wheelhouse. I figured who better to do so than a former college D lineman and a defensive line coach. Today's guest is Isaiah Fleming. This is now the second week in a row that I've been able to bring on an old college football teammate, and that takes me back a little bit. A couple years removed now from the playing days, but in my opinion, we still got it. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Isaiah.
What's up? It's awesome to be here. Appreciate you, Tanner, for having me. Like you said, one of my former college teammates, Tanner White, doing great things here at White Noise Sports. I'm Isaiah Fleming. As he said, I'm a former defensive lineman at Kalamazoo College with him. We grew up, we actually stayed right in the same dorm, right across the hall.
Yeah, man, neighbors.
Hoban, shout out Hoban. And as you said, yeah, now into the coaching life of this sport, and everything's good. Appreciate you having me, Tanner.
Great to catch up with you, man. Thanks for coming. Here's how the tier list is going to work for today, right? I'll introduce the tier that we're currently on. We're going to start firing through some of the guys I think deserve to be in it with a quick statistical rundown of their case. I'll give you that. Then you tell me if the guy deserves to be in the hall or not. You make any non-statistical arguments you have against them. We try to come to a consensus on if they actually will make it or not. You with me?
I'm with you.
All right. Two special cases I just told you about to start it off with. Aaron Donald and Jason Kelce, right? I started scripting this before either of them had officially retired, if that tells you how excited I am about this episode. What's the case against them, right? Come on. They've got a better case at being the greatest of all time at their position. I think both guys get in unanimously, but just for laughs, here are the stats. Aaron Donald as primarily a defensive tackle. Keep that in mind. 111 sacks, 24 forced fumbles, 176 TFLs. Defensive Rookie of the Year, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 8-time First-Team All-Pro. Pro Bowler in all 10 years. That's rare, too.
That's amazing.
And no argument against this, right? Jason Kelce, I think you're gonna see exactly the same way. 7-time Pro Bowler, 6-time First-Team All-Pro, 12,000 snaps over 193 games, and a Super Bowl champ. All right, so I hear that you think Jason Kelce might not be a unanimous choice.
Well, you got to look at history. History tells us everything. How many centers are in the Hall of Fame?
That's a very good point. I believe you're talking Dermontti Dawson with the Steelers.
And I believe he's the only one, correct?
Kevin Mawai.
Kevin
I believe
Mawai
was a recent
for the
choice.
Jets, Yes, he was just a few years ago. So in this whole time in the NFL, there's about 2 to 3. Well, maybe there's someone we're leaving off the list. Now, I believe Jason Kelce is a Hall of Famer. I don't think that's up for discussion, but unanimous. Is he a first ballot guy? Will he have to wait a couple years? And I think he might have to wait a couple years because it's different from any other position on the offensive line.
That's a good point.
They are really the ones that do all the dirty work and get no love. So you got to really look at how can you quantify him being a first ballot Hall of Famer when he comes up, when he's eligible. Because is it going to be games played? Because if it's games played, he's the ultimate Iron Man. In terms of, like, there's no statistical category you can use to categorize his impact that he had for the Eagles for all those years.
Yeah, you can't just say team offensive numbers. Sometimes they weren't that good.
You can't. He's a guy that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
And it's the eye test, right?
It is the eye test.
Because no one's ever played center more beautifully since we've been alive.
No, they haven't. It's really hard to find someone better than Jason Kelce. But also look at who votes for the Hall of Fame. That's one of my biggest gripes. Media people, not former players. Maybe there's a former coach in there somewhere. But media members. And media members only like flash, the glitz and glamour, the wide receivers, quarterbacks.
And they probably couldn't tell you what the center's doing, right? They probably couldn't watch the film even and parse it out.
They couldn't even tell you half of what a center has to do. What's the first step a center has to do for normal people out there that don't play football? They have to identify the mic. They have to get their offensive linemen going in the right direction. They're like the quarterback offensive line. But people don't know that. They don't understand how important that is, how much preparation goes into that. And Jason Kelce was a pro's pro. He deserves to be a Hall of Famer. I don't necessarily disagree with that or argue that. But a lock is going to be hard, and it's the question, I think, is how long will he have to wait?
Yeah, and it's a good point, too, to say you don't actually ever know
just how many people voted for somebody, as opposed to the MLB, in which the Writers Association discloses that information. And, we might never know if somebody doesn't vote for Jason Kelce or why.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy in NFL Hall of Fame voting over the years, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to shift to the lock tier now. So these guys, in my opinion, do not need to play another snap in the NFL, and they will get in comfortably or unanimously. All right?
Okay.
First up, Aaron Rodgers, mic drop, 4-time MVP, 5-time All-Pro. Listen, I don't like it either, right?
Oh, Packers.
And the words always turn to dust in my mouth, right? But 10 times Pro Bowler, and it's another thing about the eye test. He plays quarterback just differently than everybody else does. Still, people say he might be the most talented of all time.
I have to agree that he is probably a top 3 talent. My biggest gripe with Aaron Rodgers, 1 Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, only 1 Super Bowl appearance? Or was he on a second one?
I believe 2 Super Bowl appearances with the 1 ring in 2012.
See, that's almost 12 years. That's 12 years ago. I just think I've always had a problem with Aaron Rodgers in terms of his ability to go get the job done. But I don't think that will stop him from being in the lock category of the Hall of Fame.
There's no statistical argument with the regular season, to be certain. All right. Well, ultimately, we both agree Aaron Rodgers absolutely going in and first ballot. Moving on, Travis Kelce, 7-time All-Pro, 9-time Pro Bowler. You think they will show out in force?
They will, every time.
Again, very little statistical arguments against him. He's bested Gronk in a lot of statistical categories. Even Tony Gonzalez starting to break some of those tight ends receiving records. Absurd. Should have gone over 1,000 yards this year. Missed it, with the game he decided to sit out at the end of the regular season.
The Raiders, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think Travis Kelce is someone that really doesn't have to play another snap. He's great. I don't, in my own bias, just being completely honest with you, Gronkowski, man. Gronkowski is probably always going to hold that record. I mean, that title of tight end GOAT to me, but definitely Travis Kelce never needs to play another snap. He's got a gold jacket.
Yeah, absolutely. He will go in. Next one, we're going to go with O-line again and Trent Williams. So Trent Williams has had kind of an interesting career trajectory, right? I can't say that his career started slowly. Everybody knew who he was in Washington, and he earned that nickname Silverback, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And yet, ever since that move to the Niners, he's just different. I don't see another offensive lineman that's had that same impact ever since, well, maybe Jason Kelce.
He's the man amongst men. Trent Williams also beat cancer.
Yeah.
Great dude. I've watched a lot of his interviews. He's a great dude. He's like I said, he's a man amongst men. Like you said, early in his career, I don't know necessarily about the level of his play because, he was in Washington. You don't get a lot of coverage around Washington. You don't get a lot of their games or even on TV in Washington. But when he went to a system under Kyle Shanahan out in San Francisco, he really flourished. He's going to be arguably maybe a top 5 left tackle of all time.
Yeah, I think so. And left tackle is just the easiest position to get noticed. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yep, exactly. They're the one who gets the big money to protect the quarterback. He's done a great job of that his whole career. His athleticism is absolutely out of the world for an offensive lineman. The way he moves, the way he's able to pull, in the positions they put him in, it shows you how skilled he is for as big as he is. And Trent Williams is a man.
Yeah, so absolutely getting in?
Absolutely getting in.
All right. Now, one special teamer coming in here, I think this might even be the easiest one, believe it or not, maybe over Aaron Donald and Jason Kelce, Justin Tucker.
Justin Tucker. Over Aaron Donald, Jason Kelce, I don't know, but you honestly have a very compelling case because I believe that he is top, 5 in the NFL history in points scored.
And the most accurate kicker of all time.
And most accurate kicker of all time.
With that record, 66-yarder to beat the Lions. And I don't see him being not the best kicker in the league for a while.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, who knows how long Justin Tucker has left to play. I think he has to be in that category of never has to play another snap. He's a Hall of Famer.
And there's not one kicker who you could say has even come close. Even the kickers that are in the Hall of Fame, Jan Stenerud is one, Adam Vinatieri.
You don't believe Jason Hansen was close? Detroit? I know it's a little local, but he was a solid kicker for what, almost 20 years?
Yeah, over 20 years. And longevity always
Longevity
matters to voters.
It always matters, and he has the most points scored in Lions history.
True.
He was one of the staples in a very rough part of the Lions organization. I don't know, Tanner. Janikowski, Hansen. But besides that, those are the only two I think you can mention with Justin Tucker because he's absolutely phenomenal.
We're still in agreement. He's definitely going in, although I guess this wasn't as much of a lock maybe as we thought as we talked through it.
I don't know if it's as clear as we thought it was as we continue to speak about it, but I think he's a lock.
All right.
Pretty good job on this virtual lock list, right?
So we're going to move on to...
Before we do that, can I ask you something, Tanner?
Yeah, of course.
How is Pat Mahomes not in this category?
You think lock right now?
I think if that man did not play another snap, and now listen, I'm Tom Brady. Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback to ever suit him up.
Agreed.
If Patrick Mahomes stopped playing right now, he's been a starter for what, 5 seasons?
I believe 6.
6. And he's been to Super Bowl 4 out of 6. He lost one of those Super Bowl matchups.
To Tom
Brady. One of those years that he didn't make it out of the 6, he lost to Tom Brady.
Also true.
And the other one, he lost to Joe Burrow. I was thinking about this. When you look at Tom Brady's career, they always say he had 2 Hall of Fame careers in one.
Right, and especially with the decades of before 30, after 30.
Yeah, because he
splitting it
did
up like
go
that.
10 years without making a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Now, Patrick Mahomes has a long time to go. But I think right now, if he quit right now, I don't know if it's right because you have to put time in to earn that gold jacket. But he has to be more of a lock than Eli Manning right now.
Good point.
He has to be more than a lock. People tell me Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. That dude is the definition of average. He threw the same amount of touchdowns as interceptions.
Right.
He had the same amount of wins as losses over his whole career. He had 2 playoff runs from the wild card, so he was on the road every single game and won a Super Bowl. And he beat Brady in 1. Beat Brady in 2. Sorry. This kid, man, before he's 30 years old, got 3 Super Bowls. How many MVPs? 2?
Yeah, we're just going to go right into the virtual lock tier, and I got to start giving more of the stats on Mahomes so that we see how you're framing the discussion. 2-time MVP of the regular season, 3 Super Bowls, MVP for all 3 of the wins, 3-time first-team All-Pro. Bottom line, coming out of the statistics, again, the eye test. Who else has been better since Mahomes has come in? Probably nobody. Yeah, I hate to say that you're right. So Mahomes is in the virtual lock tier, but he should be in the lock tier.
Correct. He should be in the lock tier.
Okay. I think that is entirely valid, but of course we know that he's getting in because he's got a long time to go.
He has a long time to go. You think he maybe has 10 more years?
If that, then again, quarterbacks do play longer now on average, so could be longer.
So what would he have to do to become a lock in Tanner White's eyes? Does he have to win one more Super Bowl?
One more Super Bowl with an MVP, I think that it would be the lock tier, yes.
Okay.
That means an MVP in said Super Bowl, not a regular season MVP.
Okay. Do you think the Super Bowl MVP holds more weight?
I do.
Why?
Boy, it's one of the questions, right?
Yeah.
For every voter, they've got to think about that, every coach and executive. If you do it on the biggest stage, you can do it anytime, anywhere beyond that. You never have to think, is my guy going to freeze? Is my guy going to come up in the clutch? If you've done it in the Super Bowl, you'll never be afraid to do it.
I agree. I understand that. So do you think that one game, the one moment, it outweighs a whole season of work? Because now you play 17 games.
Yeah, the 17 games is going to
skew.
That's
a long time. Even when it was 16, Tanner, that's all you know when you play 10 football games in a season, that's a long time.
Agreed.
So to consistently be at the top of the game, because when Pat Mahomes comes on the field, he has to be on top of the game. And put yourself in position to win the MVP, all it takes is 1 or 2 weeks of slip-ups, and you're out of the race. And if he doesn't win it, he's always in it.
But all it takes is 1 or 2 plays in the Super Bowl. I think that's the thinnest of margins that really determine where the GOATs appear or where they lose their status.
Yeah. Okay. We agree on that. We can agree on that. I see where you're coming from.
Now, I wish that the other virtual locks were going to be that interesting. I doubt that they're going to be. I'm going to start with Julio Jones for this next one as we go into the virtual lock tier. That's a good one, right?
It's a great one.
So 5 times All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. He's the fastest to most of the receiving milestones. Now, Justin Jefferson is going to take, presumably almost all of those, right? But he has most of the Falcons' career records still, and he's 16th all-time in yards. What do you think of Julio Jones?
Personally, Julio Jones, it's hard to say I can necessarily agree that he's a virtual lock, but I have to agree just because I do believe even at second ballot, third ballot, he will make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, good point.
But I believe that being in Atlanta for all those years it helped him when they made their Super Bowl run because he was the guy. Matt Ryan finally had the year where he put it all together. But there was a lot of years Matt Ryan didn't put it all together, and Julio Jones still was that consistent top 3, top 5 NFL receiver. So that's something in his case that you can stand and fight for. But he was never the guy I feel like it's hard for us kids that grew up in Michigan because we grew up watching Megatron, where even when the Lions were the worst team in the NFL, you believed he gave you a chance. That's a guy when I look, I'm like, he's someone that didn't play as long as his career could have went. I just never felt that type of impact from Julio Jones. He always kind of felt like a guy that had all the athleticism in the world. He had the freakish talent, the great hands. His route running was absolutely exquisite. But he just never made that impact that you would feel like a lock Hall of Famer would make.
Then you're really going to hate the next receiver on this list. Man, if you're jumping ahead, if you're cheating, this is going to get tough.
Can I say the name?
Let's say, first of all, yes, no, does Julio Jones get in? I say absolutely yes.
Yes, he gets in.
Okay.
He'll get in.
Man, then the next one, DeAndre Hopkins. Uh-oh. So 5 times All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, well over 10,000 career yards. But I know you're going to say something about it.
No, honestly, actually, I think DeAndre Hopkins has a better case than Julio Jones.
Really?
DeAndre Hopkins may have less career drops than his Pro Bowl appearances. He has 5 Pro Bowl appearances, 5 times AP, and I believe he's like the Larry Fitzgerald of this decade. And I think his consistency, what him and Deshaun Watson did in Houston, was pretty special, even for that short period of time. I think that was a guy that you knew that the Texans had. If you had him on the field with Deshaun Watson, they had a chance to win. And they went and won a playoff game in Houston.
Right. That hadn't been done much.
It has not been done much. I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if he's very high in the terms of yards and touchdowns. When you talk about a guy that's Mr. Consistent.
And now with some poorer quarterback play recently.
Yeah, Tennessee is a tough situation.
Definitely.
But he likes Will Levis.
Yeah, so they say.
I believe he had a really strong finish of the season. Now, listen, y'all, I couldn't watch all the football games I was coaching. It was hard to keep up with a lot. But I feel like he had a really strong finish to the season. So maybe Will Levis can help him.
All right, thumbs up, thumbs down on DeAndre Hopkins. Believe it or not, I don't know that he's going to play a whole lot longer. I'm going to go thumbs down for now on DeAndre Hopkins.
Thumbs down?
That's because of the next receiver coming up who is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, as I look ahead, he definitely is. I will have to give DeAndre Hopkins, no. I have to agree with you, no.
And it's only because of the guys that we're comparing him to, right?
Yeah, the guys we're comparing him to. Then you look at guys like a Chad Ochocinco, like a great player on the same team, a majority of his career in Cincinnati. And, he did a little other things that might hold him back from getting in, but you can't deny that man's play. And the same thing with DeAndre Hopkins. They're very consistent. You knew what you're going to get with them, but sometimes that's not enough.
Right, sometimes the star power. Well, you like consistent. That's why we're going to talk about Mike Evans next. Not always the best receiver in the league. In fact, has never probably been called the best receiver in the league. And yet, 10 straight seasons of 1,000 yards, 94 touchdowns, 13th all-time already, second among actives, only behind Devontae Adams.
Listen, Mike Evans, the amount of disrespect he gets.
Agreed.
Should be criminal.
Oh, please.
He is, I believe right now, even at his age, behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, I think you have to be. I think you can make a very compelling case that Mike Evans is number 3 still right now in this league.
Tyreek is the one guy.
Okay, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams. I forgot those 2 names.
Right, and they're also a little bit older, all around the same age.
They all around the same age, but if you look at, especially compare him and Devontae Adams,
right.
Mike Evans and Devontae Adams.
Very good comparison.
Because you got to look, Devontae Adams spent a majority of his career to this point with Aaron Rodgers. Life is great when you have Aaron Rodgers.
It really is.
You see him go to the Raiders. He went to go ball with his boy in college. It wasn't the same. You see him with Aiden O'Connell. Like, we know Devontae Adams is still that guy, but we're not getting the same production we were getting. Mike Evans had Jameis Winston. I believe he might even caught a pass from
Mike Glennon.
Mike Glennon, thank you. That's exactly the name. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yep.
And now even Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield, literally before making the playoffs last year, they thought Baker Mayfield was looking for a job in a different field.
And now he's resurrected.
And he's completely resurrected, and I think he owes Mike Evans at least 10%.
Agreed.
People don't understand how impressive it is to get 1,000 yards in every single season that you've played in the NFL as a receiver. That talks about longevity. That talks about durability. That talks about consistency, his ability to catch, not drop balls, be able to go make explosive plays. The dude is special.
How about wanting the football, too, in big moments? I mean, who else would you throw the ball to?
Nobody. Mike Evans. I truly believe Mike Evans is the reason why Tom Brady went to Tampa.
Good point.
Because he looked at, you had Chris Godwin, too, who was a great player in his own right. But everybody else on that roster, they had some good pieces that Brady was stepping into, but Mike Evans was the solidified alpha dog, and he's been an alpha dog, and he's still going. How long you think he has left? What, he's at 94 touchdowns?
Yeah.
A couple more years, 2 more years in the league. He may be, I don't know exact number, but he could be top 7 all time in touchdowns from receivers.
Yeah. All of the stats are just going to take care of themselves because he's never had a not Mike Evans type season.
It doesn't matter who's throwing him the ball.
So that's absolutely thumbs up on Mike Evans.
Absolutely.
All right. We got one defensive guy making the list here. A couple just missing it into the one more year tier is up next. But first of all, let's talk about Bobby Wagner. 10-time All-Pro with 6 times first team, 9-time Pro Bowler, led the NFL in tackles 3 times, and the leadership.
The leader, the head of the snake when it came to the Legion of Boom. And till this day, still doing it. I remember he got cut from Seattle, went to the Los Angeles Rams, and wreaked havoc for a whole season. I believe that was another all-AP first-team All-Pro year. Seattle ended up bringing him back because they realized they messed up. Bobby Wagner, pro's pro. I think he's right where he should be in the virtual lock tier. I think middle linebacker I think he plays in the wrong era to be a middle linebacker.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think if he played 10 years earlier and he retired in 2012 instead of coming onto the scene in 2014, things like that, I think this dude would have been competing with Ray Lewis as one of those top NFL middle linebackers back in the early 2000s. This dude, special player. B-Wags is in as a Hall of Famer.
Yep, thumbs up from me too, unsurprisingly. One more that I wish now I would have moved down a little bit, and I think you're looking at me with the same thing. Lane Johnson. He doesn't carry the same weight of a name, I think, as Trent Williams, but 4-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head. He doesn't get the same recognition. He's not the somewhat superstar that Trent Williams is. But, yeah, Lane Johnson, once again, all these guys, you guys are going to understand, to get to this point, these are guys that had to put in years of consistent, absolute dominance, and these guys are great at what they do. Lane Johnson has covered a lot of backsides for quarterbacks in Philadelphia over his time. He's around that same type of level as like a Joe Thomas.
That's a good point. And everybody talked Joe Thomas should be, unanimous that he might be the greatest tackle that's ever played.
Yeah, hey, you can't. If you argue with that, then you're just delusional.
Right. That's the best offensive lineman I think that we've seen since we've been alive is Joe Thomas.
Yep. You just didn't get to see him a lot. Where you play matters, and being in Cleveland those years when they were really bad, just like the Detroit Lions and things like those players don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I think Lane Johnson, left tackle, that dude, I can see it now. They already got a bronze bust made for him. So
all right. So we're going to go thumbs up on Lane Johnson.
Yep.
Okay. Time to move into one more year tier. We're going to rapid fire a little bit more with these. And I'll give you some closer groupings of players because they're guys that people really love to compare. First up, 3 running backs, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara. Your gut reaction, do you think all 3 of those guys deserve to be in one more year? Are they too high or too low? You think there's any virtual locks in there?
I don't think there's any virtual locks. I think 2 of these 3 need to be moved down. I think Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara need to be moved down.
Oh, McCaffrey's the one you would keep.
Yeah, McCaffrey is a special cat, man. The way his 5-tool skill set type ability is just absolutely, like, that's what separates him from these other 2. Alvin Kamara has that same type of game. He could do very similar things to Christian McCaffrey, but if you want to be honest, Alvin Kamara had 1 to 2 years. He got paid, and he kind of hasn't been the same. Now, he's been dealing with off-the-field issues, but to me, the best ability is availability. And if you're not out there, it's kind of hard to judge where you're at because, especially in football, if you don't use it, you lose it. And Christian McCaffrey the last 2 years has been one of the top touchdown scorers in the league. He just had a streak of 16 straight games of scoring a touchdown.
Reigning Offensive Player of the Year.
Offensive Player of the Year. He was arguably could have been the MVP of the whole NFL this season.
Yeah, I could have voted for him for MVP and felt all right.
You wouldn't bat an eye at it. Derrick Henry, he's a hard one. He's a tough one. Huge running back, but I feel like his abilities and his skill set look better than the way they play. And he's struggled. Like, he's one of the worst running backs in short yard situations. And I think Derrick Henry, he is a great player and all, but one more year, and I think he doesn't really have many one more years. I think he's about near the end of his line. And great player, but Hall of Famer, not sure.
Okay. So I think I can go thumbs down on Derrick Henry.
Okay.
I think I can go it's tough to say thumbs down on Alvin Kamara because he did kind of revolutionize the dual threat back.
He did.
And has, in terms of receiving numbers, outpaced everybody since he's been in the league. I think we'll go thumbs down on Derrick Henry and Kamara and probably thumbs up for McCaffrey, although helps McCaffrey is the youngest. So there's a bit of bias there.
He is.
Plus, Kamara with a suspension where he missed some time. But McCaffrey has the injuries too. That's the only thing. Does he get limited later in his career?
And that's a good point. But let's look at his injury. Let's think about his injury history just for a second. Where did all of his injuries occur? Because since he's been in San Francisco, he's been pretty reliable.
Do you think it was the workload with the Panthers?
I mean, their whole offense was Christian McCaffrey. I mean, Cam Newton was still there. They didn't have a Steve Smith to throw to anymore. They didn't have some of these other playmakers. They were kind of a limited team to begin with. Cam Newton was just that special. And I just think young Christian, especially, he talked about it, that he had to add weight. He had to do things to help him sustain himself. I just think when he had all that workload in Carolina, he was a lot more injury prone. But I think ever since he's been in San Francisco, he's been pretty reliable, and I think that will help him. And we're talking about one more year, move up into our virtual lock. That one more year, this next year for Christian McCaffrey is going to be huge.
All right, so we'll go thumbs up on McCaffrey?
I'm thumbs up on McCaffrey.
Okay.
White chocolate.
Oh, yeah. All right, 3 defensive guys that get it done different ways, play some different positions, and yet everybody wants to compare them. Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Chris Jones, all in one more year.
That's a heck of a combo right there.
That's heavy hitters, isn't it?
Yeah, that is huge, heavy hitters.
So here's the thing off the bat. Who is the best player relative to their position cohort? Because, again, none of these 3 guys play the exact same position.
The best player in respect to their cohort, Chris Jones.
Really?
Chris Jones.
Oh.
Chris Jones. I think he proved it this year. He literally said, you guys want to devalue me, don't think I'm worth that money, I'll sit out. They sat out one game versus the Lions. They lost. That's all it took. Chiefs paid up big time.
They did figure it out, didn't they?
They did figure it out. It's crazy what they figure out when you're not there. You know what I'm saying? And I think especially in the Super Bowl, I watched that Super Bowl, and when I watch football, I watch trenches first. Like, it's just programmed into me.
Me too.
Chris Jones is an absolute wrecking ball. 6'8", 3-tech. That doesn't even make sense.
Right.
It doesn't even make sense. If there's supposed to be a short, fat person on a football field in the NFL, it's supposed to be D-tackle. This man is 6'8". He's an absolute freak. He plays the game differently than anybody else has. Now, I don't know if he's the best player, but in respect to their cohorts and their teams and the impact they have, Chris Jones.
Okay. So just a couple of the statistics that people can think about, throw around. TJ Watt tied the season sacks record set by Michael Strahan.
That's a bad boy.
Yeah,
that's
abnormal. So you got 5 APs for him, 5 All-Pros for Myles Garrett as well, Chris Jones. In fact, all of these guys, I just realized, 5 All-Pros, 5-time Pro Bowlers.
Only one of them with multiple Super Bowls.
Oh, that's true. 3 times Chris Jones won the Super Bowl, all with Mahomes there. Jones, of course, being a defensive tackle, has the fewest sacks, like you might imagine, but still 75 and a half. Plus, did you know this? The record for most consecutive games with a sack, at least one full sack, is Chris Jones. I just learned that researching this episode.
I did not know that record.
11 consecutive games with a sack, Chris Jones.
People don't even understand how hard that is.
No, absolutely not. Because you can be triple teamed on any given play.
Any given play, double, and it can come in so many different ways. It can be a tight end. If you're that dominant in the middle, they'll bring a tight end on a split zone action, a play action, split zone pass. They'll just throw so many different things at you. But I can't lie. Who do you think is in battle for number 2?
So the most important versus the best player, that's a different argument. I think the most important is TJ Watt. I think that the best relative to their cohort is Myles Garrett.
I agree with the most important, TJ Watt. I think in regards to the first question you asked me, out of the 3, I think it goes Chris Jones, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett.
Okay. So that devalues Myles Garrett, the hand in the dirt defensive end. And obviously Chris Jones primarily playing the 3 tech that puts him at a higher value.
Yeah.
TJ Watt, no off-ball linebacker will ever approach the things that he's doing, though.
No, they won't.
That's the most difficult part for me to get around. I love the trenches just like you do, and that's why I go with Myles Garrett. I watch even the other guys who are acknowledged as the best edge rushers, right? Nick Bosa, Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. Just that performance of, in fact, the versatility of playing both the run and the pass so much better than everybody else tells me Myles Garrett.
And I agree as a coach, defensive line coach, I definitely agree. Playing the run is just as important as rushing the passer. And I think that's also the reason why I think Chris Jones is the number 1 out of the 3.
Okay.
Because also, not only is he able to play inside, but they put him on the edge. They put him boundary side defensive end. They'll put him field side defensive end. They'll let him stand up. I think his versatility is absolutely crazy, and I think his ability to – I watch him slice and run gaps. I understand what you're saying because Myles Garrett is a defensive player of the year. We cannot forget that. But I don't know, honestly. Like, I would make a stronger argument for TJ Watt. Just those teams in Pittsburgh should not be making playoffs. And he's the only reason they do. The last game of the season, they played the Baltimore Ravens, and he was the only reason. It's also the game he got hurt. He was the only reason they won the game.
Yeah, I have to agree. Mike Tomlin's going to keep that playoff streak alive whether you like it or not.
Hey, yeah, he is.
So these are 3 really, really easy votes. That's an absolute yes on all of these guys. They will be in Hall of Fame.
That's a yes on all 3.
Yeah, I knew we would be on the same page on that one. All right. It's going to get a little bit tougher here with a couple of QBs. Talk to me about Lamar Jackson and Matthew Stafford. Couldn't be 2 more different guys to pick.
Okay, so my question would be, it makes sense. Lamar Jackson, definitely 1 more year. I mean, he's a great player. He's dynamic. But when it comes to Matthew Stafford, though, can we really give him another year? He's been doing this a long time. I've never been the biggest Matthew Stafford, fan, just to keep it simple. And it's hard to give him another year when he's just done he has so much body of work right now. And I think he's literally near the end. I think this might be his last year playing football.
I do agree.
And if this is his last year playing football, what would he have to accomplish in that 1 more year for you to move up into our next tier?
It would be tough almost to call him a virtual lock, even if, for example, they win the Super Bowl, which I don't think the Rams have any chance of doing.
Yeah, but so you think even with a second Super Bowl in his career, he wouldn't be a virtual lock? I think a Super Bowl might be the only thing he could do to become a virtual lock.
Okay, that's a good point. Because even, for example, a regular season MVP where he lights it up, but then a first-round playoff exit, I would say no. I would say no, not a virtual lock.
No, and I think also people try to tell us that Detroit didn't have some good teams when he was there, and they didn't for the most part. But there were some years where they did have teams, and he was never that guy that took you to the next level. He went and won a Super Bowl where it was kind of like throwing a frozen pizza in the oven. It was already made. He just had to heat it up, and he made it work. Credit to him. They went and got the job done. But like with Lamar needs a few more years. I don't think it's about the stats with Lamar Jackson.
Right.
I just think it's straight up about wins and losses at this point.
And we saw that in the MVP conversation this year.
Yep.
Not a standout statistical season in a lot of ways,
No.
and yet he was on the best team in football.
Yes, he was.
And was a leader of the best team in football.
Yes, he was, and you have to give him credit for that. I think his stats and leading and that equating to an MVP kind of speaks to the level of football that's played nowadays. It's a little bit down.
And Tom Brady just said that shortly after the offseason awards. Did you see that?
Yeah, he
Where he
did.
kind of said that there isn't the same level of excellence in football as even when I was in the middle of my career.
And there's not. It's not. It really isn't. There's a lot of shortcuts that are taken out. When the GOAT speaks, you listen, and he knows what he's talking about. And they've made the game easier for a lot of people. And when you make a game easier, people don't prepare as well. I think with Lamar, it just comes straight up to wins and losses. He has, 2 or 3 playoff wins in his whole career. He's been in the playoffs multiple times. He's been a 1 seed multiple times. So we see that you can win from week 1 to week 18. But in week 1 of January, and can you go get it done? And I think even if he had a year next year coming up where he won, maybe made a AFC championship, I think he would still be in a 1 more year, 2 more year category.
Yeah, true. If there were a 2 more year, I could almost put Lamar down lower. And I hate to say that for a guy that's won 2 MVPs.
It's hard to say it for a guy who won 2 MVPs, but when we were goes back to our conversation earlier, we talked about the difference between Super Bowl MVPs and regular season MVPs. If it's not the same for Pat Mahomes, what does it weigh in value in terms of respect to Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Let's vote here with Matthew Stafford. Are you going to say down? As we've talked about it, I often say up, but I think I'm going to go down right now.
I'm down on Matthew Stafford.
Okay. And for Lamar?
Down on Lamar, no. He has a ways to go.
Okay, I'm also down on Lamar. I almost wish I would have put him down 1 more tier.
That's why we talk about these things.
Yeah, man, it's important. Okay, we got 2 more here in this tier with Khalil Mack and Devontae Adams, former Raider, current Raider. Whole lot of accomplishments in their career. Khalil Mack, 5-time All-Pro with 4 times first team, over 100 sacks. That usually means something to voters. 8-time Pro Bowler. Devontae Adams, 3-time first team All-Pro. I mentioned 95 touchdowns. He's the active leader, plus 6 times Pro Bowl.
Khalil Mack in this category is an absolute shame, Tanner.
What? Where do you want him?
He should be almost in virtual lock.
Really?
How many sacks did he just have this year at age 35?
He was for a large chunk of the year leading the league, and I admit that was very impressive.
And he's 35. This dude, Khalil Mack, his career and everywhere he's been, because he started with the Raiders, like you said, then he went to Chicago. He was a staple in Chicago for a long time, and Chicago had their best teams when Khalil Mack was there. I think Khalil Mack, listen, when it comes to rushing the passer, playing in the run, literally being a man and literally lifting grown men off their feet.
I think that is my favorite D-end highlight of recent memory is him with the one-arm stab to Tristan Wirfs of all people.
The young fella. I think he was a rookie, too. He's just welcome to the big show, dude. This. If you're asking me, I think Khalil Mack is almost in the virtual lock.
You know what? I hear you. I do. Like I said, 100 sacks is a milestone. It used to mean probably a little bit more, but I do think the voters still look at that. 8 times Pro Bowl as well. We are thumbs up on Khalil Mack.
Thumbs up on Khalil Mack. The Mack attack, the Mack action product. University of Buffalo.
Yeah, man. Not a lot of huge NFL names coming out of the Mack, but I love it.
But that's one of them.
And Devontae Adams with the 95 touchdowns. What do you think?
I think he's interesting. I think Devontae had a good 2 to 3 year run where he really was in his own, came into his own with Aaron Rodgers. But besides that, I feel like it's a lot of I kind of call them Little Debbie's, empty calories. There's just a lot of empty calories with him. I think he's a great player. I think his skill set is amazing, a best route runner in the NFL. I think he's unguardable. But in terms of the production, the numbers he had in our conversation, I think he's in that 1 more year tier. I think he may need 2 more years. But if 1 year with Aiden O'Connell may equate to 3 years with an actual quarterback. So
yeah, if he does anything, you think that it should hold some more weight.
Yeah, brownie points for sure for Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that is a good point. I do think that he's going to get in. I am thumbs up on Devontae Adams.
As of now, I'm thumbs up on Devontae Adams.
Although wide receiver is a very difficult way to make it.
Yes, and there's a lot of great receivers, especially nowadays. Oh my God, what some of these young guys are doing. Yeah, especially with what some of these young guys are doing, like you alluded to, Justin Jefferson earlier. It doesn't even make sense. These guys are just absolutely phenomenal.
All right, that's gonna.
Oh, you can't. You almost skipped one name.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. One receiver, in fact, that I missed. That's a good call. And this is going to be another interesting one to talk about. Keenan Allen, 6 times Pro Bowl, well over 10,000 yards now, and 904 receptions.
He is the textbook definition of a ball magnet.
Very much so. He would be in Webster's under reception. But listen, I'm out on Keenan Allen.
I think I'm out on Keenan Allen, too.
I think I'm out on Keenan Allen. Like I said, when you have a Hall of Fame player, and now we're not talking about guys like Pat Mahomes, who's only been in the league for 6 years, 5 years at this point. We're talking about guys who've been in the league for 10 years plus, similar to Mike Evans.
Yes.
The impact that Keenan Allen has had on a team in terms of winning on the field, I don't think it's been very impactful at all. I think
very little, unfortunately.
Very little. And I think he's a guy whose game is very similar to a Larry Fitzgerald. And you see when you had someone like Larry Fitzgerald, obviously he had Carson Palmer. When you have someone that can produce, like when you have a Hall of Famer that produces at the level, like you make playoff appearances, you make playoff runs. Even if you don't win a Super Bowl, you're at least in contention. And it just felt like up to this point in his career, the Chargers have never really been in contention. Now, maybe that's just the Chargers and not really on Keenan Allen, but he's been the main staple of that franchise for a long time. So it kind of goes on him if you ask me.
Maybe he goes crazy with the Bears. Maybe he starts a whole new second chapter that's really productive in his career, but maybe not.
Maybe not.
I'm not going to hold my breath on it with a rookie QB.
Yeah, we'll save our thoughts for Caleb Williams at a different date.
Agreed. All right. That's all the way through one more year tier. We'll come out of the break and head into part 2 with Fringe tier. Those are guys that could go either way, in or out, especially when compared to contemporaries at their position. Thanks so much for joining us for part 1 of the NFL Hall of Fame tier list, and be sure to tune in to hear Isaiah and I tackle part 2 in a moment.
Gonna have a chance to turn 2. They got him. Carrying track, wall, and it's gone. Throwing to the end zone, tipped, picked off. They shoot and score